everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. I got a whole crew here. We got Robert Cessna, also from the Eagle, but we also have got Jordan Hill and Justin Lee of the Auburn Opelika News, sister paper to the Eagle out there, who cover Auburn A&M's opponent this week. What's going on, guys? How are y'all? Besides
Doing great. Yeah, we're doing good. We made it through high school football last night, so we're good to go, ready for Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched the lead of Sports Center, but yeah, it's been we had a crazy game, and it's been
that's what
everywhere.
I hear. What was it, 9 points in 30 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, they had what they didn't really show was that they had 1st and 10 at the opposing 20, up by 9 with 1:19 left.
Wow. Well, let's move right on into the game this weekend, and that is A&M versus Auburn. This is an Auburn team that I don't know if I quite know what to make of it. Is this a team that to be feared by the SEC, or is this a team that is rebuilding? What have y'all seen this year?
Justin, you can take it.
I think they're a tier below Georgia and Alabama and the like, significantly a tier below, but I still think they're firmly in that second tier, which is weird. And I don't know, maybe that's just the way this year is shaken down. Like, I'll go ahead and tell y'all, I'm picking Auburn to beat Texas A&M, which is the weirdest casual top 5 upset I've ever seen. But I would, that's just to say that I would be really impressed by Texas A&M to come in here on the road and to win. It's just been such a weird year, but and it's when they get beat down by Alabama, it's kind of hard to figure out where they are. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to quit because of that game, and I still do think they're the 4th or 5th best team in the SEC, or maybe 3rd.
And I would jump off of what Justin said. I mean, I agree for the most part. With that assessment, I mean, you've seen with some of the better teams that Auburn has played this year, notably Georgia early in the season, where they really had things clicking with Stetson Bennett in the offense. And then obviously the Alabama game last week. I think it's fair to say Auburn's not to that caliber of those teams. But they've looked good in most of those other games. The only other loss, that South Carolina game, it boiled down to 3 turnovers that flipped the field for South Carolina, and South Carolina took advantage of it. So yeah, I think this will be, as strange as it sounds to be 2 weeks away from the end of the regular season. It's kind of, the A&M game to me is a pretty good litmus test of how good this Auburn team really is.
Sorry, guys, when you were doing your intros about high school football, I was going to say, hasn't some Auburn fans says that describes Auburn's offense this year?
They like to describe Gus that way, and he's a high school coach. But I say you take the good with the bad, because a lot of the players love him for being a high school coach. So there you go.
Yeah, I was referring to Morris coming in and looking at these numbers. Actually crunched some numbers last night. They're like 65, 66 in most offensive categories. And I just don't expect that from a Gus Miles on offense. He's so innovative in the times I've seen him. And adding Chad Morris, and I know he's had a history with the coordinators, but I actually, with those receivers and Knicks, kind of expect better numbers this year.
What was weird? Until the Alabama game, which was an inexcusable beatdown. Before that, and I didn't expect them to be able to compete going in just because of how good Alabama is. But before that, when I looked at the Georgia loss and the South Carolina loss, I really thought about, maybe this is a brand new offensive coordinator who didn't have a spring, and and you hear all the excuses, but I think there's some legitimacy to that, especially early in the season. Like they went to South Carolina convinced that they were going to win on Bo's arm, and it ended up being the wrong game plan. And they were aggressive early, throwing early, and he ended up throwing 3 interceptions. And since then, it seemed like they figured it back out. And, it seems like, because Chad's more of a throw guy and Gus is more of a run guy, I think Chad has taken on more running lately, and that led to their success up until the Alabama game. So I don't know. I think I honestly do, it sounds like an excuse, but I do attribute, especially some of that early stuff, to them just having a new coach in a new place.
And I think, too, the funny thing looking back on that South Carolina game, because, again, those turnovers were ultimately the deciding factor. But I remember early in that first quarter, probably into the second quarter, Bo had gotten off to a great start. And it kind of looked like, okay, things are clicking and this is going to work, using that tactic of really relying on his arm. And then he just made some throws that really cost them. But I think Justin hit the nail on the head. I think they've kind of figured out that the personnel that Chad's working with. And that's something that, Gus has talked about through the early part of the season. And you could say on one side, well, Chad Morris is getting paid X amount of money. He should be able to figure this thing out. But I mean, it's just not that simple, especially without having a spring and the way fall kind of was getting everything together. I think it's been, a learning process for Chad. And I think that, putting the Alabama game aside, because, again, I don't think we expected them maybe to compete more than they did in that game because Alabama just kind of ran away with it. But the last few weeks, the offense seems to have been clicking really well, and they've seemed to have really utilized their personnel, which I know is something that the coaching staff, when they've talked to us, have really, really been stressing.
Yeah, you kind of addressed what I was going to ask next a little bit, but talking about Bo Nix, he was kind of the rave of college football last season. His performance this season, do you see steps of improvement and growth? Do you see a little bit of regression, or is a lot of the up and down performances have to do with adjusting to a new offensive coordinator?
If he was the rave of college football last season, that was news around here because I mean he gets heavily criticized by his own fan base. I think more than even outside. I think he's better. I think he's better, and I think he's a really good player even when he's not playing like it. And there are stretches where he's not playing as well as he could be. And I don't know. Like I said, I do think there's some change. But when they beat down LSU, I mean, he can play picture perfect. And I think one of the big differences is when he's on the road and he's at home. I mean, I can't remember his touchdown to interception ratio. Maybe Jordan can remember it. On the home and road, the split is crazy. And, even this past home game was his first ever interception thrown at home. So I think, the unfortunate thing with Texas A&M is they're going to be playing home Bo Nix, who's a lot better than on the road.
I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think when you look at his freshman year, I think the proper way I would describe it is flashes. You saw flashes of like, this guy has the ability to develop into, a really, really good quarterback. And this year, the issue, and I think it's been one that's even going back to last year, is just consistency, kind of like what Justin was just hitting on. His road and home splits are significantly different. In that LSU game, it kind of looked like, okay, this is what they wanted to see. And what if he could keep playing like that, would be huge for Auburn going down the stretch. And I think it's fair to say, he hasn't continued that, mainly with that Iron Bowl performance in mind. But I think that Bo has shown a lot of improvement. I think the biggest thing is, I mean, you can tell, his running ability is such a key part of the way they use him in this offense. And I think it's fair to say he certainly looks faster. I don't know, if they've measured it or anything like that, but he seems like he's faster. And, I think that it'll be interesting to see the next two games, and if they wind up having a bowl game, if we see, him getting even more comfortable in Chad's offense and getting ready for 2021.
You're looking at home, you're looking at 15 touchdowns and 1 interception in his career. And on the road, 11 touchdowns and 12 interceptions.
Wow.
So who do you see as the key on offense for this game for Auburn? Because I've listened to the teleconference when Gus says they have to run the ball. A&M's number 2 in the conference against the run. They do everything to take everybody away. So who is it? The line? Is it Bo? Is it those great wide receivers? Who do you think is the key to that offense having success against A&M?
I'll start off, and for me, I think it's going to be whoever's going to be the lead running back, and that's the biggest question going into this game. We don't know. Tank Bigsby's been banged up since the Tennessee game. He tried to give it a go against Alabama and just wasn't the same guy. And Gus even said as much after the game. So we still don't know if he's going to be playing. DJ Williams, who's been another guy that's shown flashes, he got hurt, and he's been hurt for most of the fall. He got hurt against Alabama. So we could see both those guys play. We could see them play but be limited. We could see Sean Shivers step up and Sean started the year, he's not a big guy, but he was expected to be the lead running back in sort of a running back by committee situation. We could see him step up. We could see Mark Anthony Richards. He's a guy that got hurt last year, was a really, I think he's like a 4-star running back when Auburn signed him. People were really excited about him, and he hurt his knee last fall and had been limited getting back this season, has started playing the last few weeks, and then wound up being Auburn's lead running back in that Iron Bowl loss. Obviously, they didn't run the ball like they needed to, and it's sort of like a consolation prize that he wind up being the lead running back, but they may need him to step up and take some, much more valuable carries this week than compared to last week when it was essentially mop-up duty. So that's something we're certainly watching as far as the offense goes, who steps up, who's even available at running back. And because I think if they get in a situation where for the second straight week they cannot establish the run, it's going to be some real issues.
Defensively, I know the defensive front for Auburn is something that's been a talking point the last couple of seasons and a talking point amongst some of the guys on A&M's team. What with what LSU was able to do and be one of the few teams that actually got pressure in on Kellen Mond, how much of that has been a strong suit or something of the team this year, and how much do you think getting pressure on Kellen Mond is going to be a part of that game plan as well?
I think it will be huge if they're able to do it. It's just not been something we've seen consistently from Auburn this year. And I know talking to Colby Wooden, who's been a big part of when Auburn has successfully brought pressure and created pressure, he acknowledged the challenge that's going to be this week, given how experienced Texas A&M's offensive line is. So it's been – they knew going into this year it was going to be a big factor in replacing the production of a Derek Brown and a Marlon Davidson. I mean, those guys were otherworldly as far as getting pressure and making quarterbacks uncomfortable. And you've seen flashes from guys like Colby, who's just a redshirt freshman. Derek Hall's had a few good games. He played really, really well against LSU in that win back on Halloween. But it's not been something we've seen consistently. And I think that if they want to throw Kellen Mond off, that's what they've got to do, is be able to get after him and really make him uncomfortable, especially early on. I think it's not something we've seen week to week. You've seen flashes, and I think that's going to be a big key for the defense.
They managed it against LSU, and that was a really important part of that game. LSU came in with a true freshman quarterback. The entire game plan was to get to him and rattle him, and it worked. So, they'll probably be trying to do the same thing. But like you said, they're replacing this year a first-round draft pick and a second-round draft pick. So, they're just living with what they got right now.
What about, you guys touched on it, what they're going to play for, but, on the outside looking in, I'm thinking like, I've seen A&M have beatdowns to Alabama, and then sometimes, it's tough to come back. And then when I look, what is Auburn playing for? And I know you could say for Gus's job and all that, but I don't know if players, this kind of deal is, it's a COVID year. We're seeing guys give up other teams right now and just not even the guy at LSU, Arkansas. So I guess what are the players playing for?
I thought it was pretty interesting, I even asked Gus on Tuesday the fact that Auburn hasn't had any opt-outs to this point, because you could argue, you could say, well, what's left to play for? And he talked about how close the team is and how they wanted to finish this thing out right. But I think they truly see an opportunity. I think they truly see that the way they played against Alabama, it does not represent how good this team could be. And I think they see this Texas A&M game as a chance to prove themselves, that it's a chance. As Colby Wooden told us on Tuesday, that, that Alabama game wasn't us. We can hang with the big dogs. We can hang with the big dogs outside of just the SEC. I think they see this game as a real proving ground, especially with it being at home. As weird as this season has been for Auburn, if they win on Saturday, they're going to go undefeated at home. And that's the first time in 3 years that they've won every home game. They've been outstanding at home. I think that that's the biggest thing, aside from any of the rumors about the coaching stuff, or aside from, knowing that at this point, all you're really playing for is to figure out, where you might go to a bowl, if we even have a bowl season. But I think it's the fact that they know that they've got, quality guys on both sides of the ball. but they want to prove it. They want to prove it against a team that's knocking on the door of the playoff, and to have it at home, to have it on senior day for some of these guys. They see it as a real opportunity from what I've heard and heard, from Malzahn and some of the players, and they want to go prove themselves.
I'll say it's going to be weird for them. First of all, ain't nobody going to opt out here. That's just how it is. You can call it a cult or whatever, but they're not going to opt out. They're all bought in and they're going to stay. But one of the weird things is, even just for us being around the program, just even writing, which is, nobody over here, it's weird that we're still working after the Iron Bowl. It's weird. And for them, it has to be crazy. It has to be, I don't know how, you empty the tank in that game. So maybe that will be a factor this week coming into this one, that, maybe they're just feeling spent and they're turning their attention to 2021. That could be a thing. I don't think it would be because anybody quit on the coaches or quit on each other, because that's not what they're going to do. But it's just weird to play after the Iron Bowl, and that might be a factor. I don't know.
And I think just to that point real quick, I mean, the offense specifically, because we talked about the running backs, and then you got two offensive tackles. The left tackle is out, and they're going to have the backup playing, and then the right tackle is questionable. So maybe that's what we see on Saturday if they have trouble going, that they are physically spent from what's been a pretty trying season.
Jordan, you touched on it. You said that Auburn's gone for an unbeaten season at home. A&M's the same shape. They're unbeaten at home with one more game to go. So Jimbo also talked about he loved the atmosphere at Auburn. Of course, he was assistant there. But now with the COVID, what kind of atmosphere can we expect there Saturday? Particularly for 11 o'clock game too.
Yeah, I'm interested to see as far as the turnout, but I mean, I feel like given, we all know it's not going to be the same, because it can't be the same just for volume and capacity compared to most years. But I've heard it get pretty loud considering, the fact that there's not as many fans this year. So I think all things considered that, when the fans have had a chance to get excited and make noise, that you've seen it. But, it's not quite what they're used to. I'm sure the players are used to as well. And we may see, 11 a.m. game after the Iron Bowl loss, and the way Auburn, looked in that game, that might not wind up being a factor. I'm sure Auburn wants it to be. So we'll see. As I say, the circumstances don't set up well for it to be a factor. But we'll see if the fans show up and say, hey, we've got only, this last home game of the year, we might as well go out and go loud.
Hey, I'm interested, guys, on the outside looking in. We talked to you about our thoughts on Malzahn and Nix from watching TV and reading. What do you guys think? Kellen Mond, where do you guys rate him in the West quarterbacks and in the SEC?
Justin, I'll let you start that if you got it.
Well, I don't want to be mean, but he's been steady, I guess. He's been what he is, and every year it's like, oh, he's going to take these 2 steps forward, or he's going to do this or that, and it's like, well, he's the same player he was, and he's who he's going to be. And I think, I don't know, and to have the record you have, I think that's just a credit to the coaching staff to know who you've got, adjust to who you've got, and the Heisman isn't happening. It's not happening for Kellen, so. To have the record they have, to be a top 5 team and be here at the end of the season with the chance to, win 2 more games and you got a shot at the playoff. That's just a good job by everyone, including Kellen, to, know his limitations and be who he's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's essentially what I would say about Kellen. And, just from what I've seen, and I'm going back to thinking about last year's game at College Station, that I thought that would be a really big opportunity for Kellen to kind of have a breakout game. And he played pretty well looking at the numbers and looking back at that game, but obviously Auburn was able to win it. So I'd say, that's kind of how I see Kellen, and, maybe he'll go prove me and Justin wrong on Saturday.
Yeah, I know y'all mentioned it at the beginning, but just a little bit of a chance as we wrap this thing up to expound on y'all's picks. I know Justin is calling for the Auburn win. What's kind of the keys to that would make that happen for Auburn?
I think they need to establish the run, first of all, and they need to capitalize on their opportunities off of it with Bo and Seth Williams. And I think they just need to play. They need to play like themselves. They need to completely forget last week, completely forget the Iron Bowl, and play like themselves. And if they do that, if they play like themselves, I do think it would be a really impressive win for A&M to come to JordanHare and to win on the road against this team. I do think it would be. I mean, there's a reason the Vegas line is like 2 or 3. You know what I mean? And it's a top 5 team and an unranked team. I think the match and then the other thing, like we were trying to talk about, was pressuring the quarterback. If they can pressure Kellen, you get him off balance. That was the key to that LSU game, and you saw. I mean, that was a complete beatdown. That was what unlocked that. Like that's what it was. And if they can do that, I think that would be another huge key for Auburn.
We've got a split newsroom on this one. I picked A&M, but close, just because I'm not convinced Auburn's going to be able to run the ball given the injuries and given we don't know. If Tank plays like he has all season, that could be enough to sway what I think is going to be a really close game, especially given how well Auburn's played at home. But given the fact that their offense is beat up right now, I'm not convinced they're going to be able to hold off A&M.
Cease, you got anything else for these guys?
Unless they got anything for us, and I got to admit, I'll go with A&M, but I'm interested to see what Mond does, because he was horrible last week. Mm-hmm. And you guys mentioned LSU. You guys played well against LSU. I mean, Auburn did, so maybe they'll take some confidence out of that comparison, because Mond was as bad as the rain, as they say, and if he gets a little pressure, he didn't do too good there 2 years ago when we had a lead. So I think. Play of the quarterbacks could be a key, as you mentioned. A&M fan base a lot of times aren't happy with Mond, like you said, that Nick. It's when you're a quarterback, that's the way life goes.
Yeah, I'm going with.
They love you when you're winning.
Yeah, I'm going with A&M as well. But my key is the offensive line. I mean, Mond was bad, but I think a lot of that had to do with the probably the worst game the offensive line has had this year, and it's something that's been a staple for A&M. For their success this year. So if the offensive line can step back up and do what they did early in the season, I think they'll win. Cease, or guys, y'all got anything?
I think it'll be a fun game to watch. I'm excited for it.
For sure.
They need some sleep first.
I know.
Those guys. Yeah.
I think we all do. Well, thanks so much.
They got up early for us. Oh man.
Yeah. What's the best way that people can find y'all's stuff and interact with y'all on Twitter or whatnot?
My Twitter is by Justin Lee. Our big one is AU Blog, at AU Blog. That's where you can find all our Auburn University coverage. And then at OA Now is our website. Opelika-Auburn News, OA Now.
Yeah, at Jordan Davis Hill, and then like Justin said, that's the rest of our stuff. And ready to turn out the content, ready to go watch this game.
There it is. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and be sure also to check theeagle.com as we get set up for this game from the A&M perspective, and we'll be out there in Auburn this weekend to cover Texas A&M and Auburn. Thanks, everybody.